All right, good morning, folks. Today is February 28th, 2025, and this is Coffee with Community Services, Alta California Regional Center's weekly service provider meeting. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is John Decker. I'm the Director of Community Services. We have 78 folks on right now. I am going to, as usual, do staff introductions, and then we will get into our agenda for today. So for staff on, we have Hubert on, we have Dee Dee, we have our training manager on Herman this morning. Good morning. From community services, I see Tom and Michael and Alejandra, and I see Jaslyn and Megan, and I see our managers Scott and Michelle. Good morning as well. My assistant Zach is on. I see Virginia and Rhonda and Alicia and Kylie from Community Services, as well as Carol from Client Services this morning, too. Good morning. I also, moving on to my next page, I see Christine and Jessica and our lead Community Services specialist, Jason. Good morning. Also from Client Services, we have Toby Golden. Good morning. And our managers, Jordan and Helen, are on. Additionally, from Community Services, we have Mason and Shauna and Boyd. And from Client Services from Woodland, representing Veronica. Good morning. And then our Director of Client Services, Jennifer Bloom, as well. Good morning. All right. So thank you all for joining. We do have about 80 folks that are on for our agenda today. We're going to have Michael share the sign of the week, Deaf Culture 101. And then I think we're going to go roll right into the communication cards at that point. And then we are going to discuss rate reform. We're going to talk about the acknowledgement letters, the service provider directory updates that have come out. We're going to talk about adaptive skills training a little bit more because we have had a number of discussions with service providers about the new adaptive skills training directive. And so we want to share a little bit of information that we've received from the Department of Developmental Services about that service change. And then yesterday, we got a little bit of an update from the Department of Developmental Services on HCBS. And so we'll just give a kind of an overview of information about that as well. And any other additional agenda items, happy for you all to put them into the chat. We can take a look at, as well as we will take a look at the Department of Developmental Services and Alta's upcoming calendar events. So I will throw it over to Michael first.
Hi, good morning. So our signs of the week. So for those of you who want to introduce yourself, it's going to have to do with names. So the first thing will be my name is, what is your name, and nice to meet you. So we'll start with the first one, how you say my name is. So it's my, and then name. Yeah, and then you can practice on your own finger spelling your name. So you'll do my name, and then you finger spell. So the word is English. American Sign Language does not use the word is, so we'll just say my name and then you say your name. Next, we have what is your name? So that's how you would say it in English. In sign language, you're going to do your name, what? So your name, what? Perfect. Then our third one is, so you've already introduced each other, introduce yourselves, and then you say nice to meet you. So first is nice. And then think about two people approaching each other. So meet you. Awesome. So we'll do the three again. So my name, your name, is what? What is your name? And then nice to meet you. Awesome. Good job, everyone. And then I'll send a link as well for you to be able to practice. I look forward to seeing some of you be able to see you introduce your name in sign language. Okay, so for Deaf Culture 101, we're going to focus on language deprivation. This will be part one. Next Friday, I'll do a part two. It's a lengthier discussion when we're talking about language deprivation. So most parents of deaf children, actually 90% of children who are born deaf, they're born to hearing parents. And for those parents, their deaf child might be the first deaf person that they've met. Many parents don't know what to do when they find out that their baby is deaf. And that's a common thing for some parents to experience. So there'll be medical advice and misinformation. Oftentimes, when they find out that a baby is deaf, a doctor or audiologist might recommend cochlear implants first off as the first option. Many professionals will tell parents, don't learn sign language because they believe that that will interfere with speech development. So that is a misconception that actually harms deaf children. It harms their language access and development. So why is avoiding sign language a mistake? ASL is a fully developed language. It has its own grammar, has its own structure. Learning sign language does not prevent speech development. Many deaf children can learn both if they're given the access early on. Delaying learning American Sign Language can lead to that language deprivation, which causes long-term cognitive and social issues. So now what exactly is language deprivation? So language deprivation is when a child does not have access to language early on during those critical years from birth to 5. So for deaf children, that often will mean a lack of access to a fully visual language like sign language, which that can lead to difficulties in acquiring communication skills, academic performance, and social skills as well. So deaf children who do not receive language early, they may struggle with English, with language fluency, academic achievements, and have a hard time understanding their own identity. So oftentimes deaf children with language deprivation, later on, they miss American Sign Language early on. They'll learn sign language later because they realize that they weren't exposed to that because it was so focused on speech, and they realized that that was ineffective. So, and by that point, that language acquisition is a lot harder. So it can be, it can be a challenge with cognitive development, social interactions, and identity. So if you don't teach sign language, they struggle orally, and then by 5, the brain has stopped developing quickly. So when they learn sign language later, it creates a lot of challenges. So you can teach speech and sign language at the same time. So now specifically with cochlear implants, comparing cochlear implant users with someone who knows sign language versus none. Studies have shown that deaf individuals who have cochlear implants without ASL often will face language delays and communication difficulties. So deaf children who use cochlear implants with American Sign Language have better language development and cognitive skills. So the research shows that bilingual ASL and spoken language deaf individuals perform better academically and socially rather than those who rely on speech and hearing. Many deaf individuals who are encouraged to use cochlear implants later will end up using American Sign Language for that full access. So there's really an importance for early language access. Deaf children need that exposure to a visual language for that healthy brain development. Learning from birth and communicating with a child, and regardless of their hearing ability, you can use cochlear implants or hearing aids with sign language. You're going to have a better connection with the deaf child that will improve the relationship and their emotional well-being as well. So the best approach is bilingualism. So providing ASL communication access and other communication methods. So using ASL, that is their natural first language, and that access will ensure that they're successful. So this is part one. Part two will explain what language acquisition looks like and how that's developed. So we're finished with Deaf Culture 101 for now. Now we can, I'll move on to the communication cards. So with Huber, our emergency communication coordinator, right, just making sure I have my screen all right. So these communication cards, they're visuals for those who are deaf and hard of hearing, who struggle with English and struggle with reading and writing, or for nonverbal individuals who don't speak. So these communication cards, we encourage you to use them if you see an emergency situation or something going on. For example, in LA, they just had those serious wildfires. This is a great example of the cards, so you can see what they look like. We'll give you a chance to look those over. So Hubert and we talked about this because we got these communication cards from the Department of Developmental Services, but those usually are for consumers. Oftentimes consumers don't want them. Maybe it's a day program or really any program that wants to use these as a resource. It could be for family, friends, staff members in the workplace. If you have these readily available, they're also on the website, the Alta California Regional Center. Deaf and hard of hearing resources is where you can find those. You're able to print them, you can save them electronically. Hubert and I really wanted to develop these for everyone to be able to have access to them. So yeah, so we also use pictures for those who are deaf who also have developmental disabilities. And then we did some focus groups to get some feedbacks, modified the cards a little bit. So we were able to do a second round of feedback on those after we made some edits. And then we were able to finalize those cards. Hubert was able to work getting these all together. And this is a great resource that's available for everyone to use. Hubert, is there anything you wanted to add?
Not really, just other than they are available on two different web pages on our website. Michael mentioned the deaf and hard of hearing webpage and the emergency preparedness webpage as well. They are translated in 6 different languages, including English, Hmong, Punjabi, Russian, Spanish, and Tagalog. I mean, big picture, hopefully we can get these to, emergency responders and personnel, just so that eventually, with the hopes that we can bridge the gap between language barriers between deaf, hard of hearing, nonverbal, and hearing individuals during emergencies and crisis situations.
Thank you, Hubert.
All right, any questions from folks? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add, there is, oh, the link is already in there. Never mind. Okay.
All right, excellent presentation. I want to acknowledge as well this presentation and the support that was sought by our client advisory committee. when it came to developing this. And so I just want to acknowledge that, and I appreciate the work that you guys did in meeting there and going over this with our clients that also advise the regional center in what we do. Alrighty. I am now going to go over to discuss about rate reform, and I'm going to get that information from DDS's website. And all right. Can everyone see my screen okay over there? Yeah, we're seeing DDS's website. Very good. All right. So a lot of the updated information that we are going to be providing is going to be contained on DDS's website. But I do have a specific summary email from the Department of Developmental Services that I want to share with folks that outlines a lot of the highlights and gives some specific information that has not been given anywhere else. And so this is an update from DDS as it relates to rate reform quality incentive program. So the rate models have been updated with the minimum wage and IRS mileage rates. We've talked about that previously. The updated rate models are posted on DDS's website. Additionally, I indicated that there was an update to FMS rates for participant-directed services. Those have also been updated as well on the DDS website under reimbursement rates. For supported employment group, under service code 950, they will continue with current billing method based on job coach hours using the same rate as supported employment individual. This is a change from the previous recommendation of billing based on number of individuals per group. This billing will continue until further notice and at least through December 31st, 2025. The department will be updating posted rates for service code 950 on the rate reform webpage. A revised directive is forthcoming. So that will be more information from that. Please connect with your assigned community services specialist that works with you for specific questions about that one. QIP update. With each release, the department will include instructions to regional centers to make the following one-time QIP incentive payments. Regional centers will have 90 days to issue these payments. There's a summary here of just the payments in general that have gone out, which is significant for the quality incentive statewide. And then there's also a plug to attend the March 17th upcoming QIP work group meeting, which is on, if you go to DDS's website, hopefully you guys are seeing DDS's website now. If you go to DDS's website and you go to their calendar, you can get that invite right here for that QIP meeting. Okay, so let's get back to the highlights again. So for the service provider directory, I know we discussed this at the provider advisory committee meeting. We additionally addressed it at the last couple coffee with community services, but a significant amount of data has been transmitted over related to the service provider directory to the regional centers. We mentioned that the department was on the end of doing the last data transmission for all service providers that are eligible to receive the quality incentive payments effective January 1. We believe that we already have that information now, that it has been given, and we believe that the department has posted that information that you all can look at as well. And so let me share quickly where that information is located on DDS's website. So again, where I'm navigating to on DDS's website is to the rate reform tab, to the provider directory tab, because provider directory is that big activity that you as service providers, and I think probably every single one of you have done it, have gotten yourselves logged into through a survey. So we, in the past, have had groups broken down like this of the different categories of providers and what the department, how the department categorized them as to whether or not they were going to be receiving the quality incentive. This is also tied to whether or not people, are getting that full benchmark rate. So very important to know what your status is. I feel very confident, probably that every single provider on this call is on here, but now the lists have been updated. And to give you an idea of the lists, because they're publicly searchable here, you can sort the list. And in this case, you can just look at Alta service providers if you'd like. You can sort them alphabetically, or you can, I don't know if Eric's on here, but you can like look yourself up. So, if you're like UCP, you can see whether or not you are on the list or not, or any of your other Tri-County respite. So this is our list of providers. We are very encouraged to see that we have 894 providers on this list. So if you guys want to just remember that number, that we have 894 providers that have already successfully completed the quality incentive program. I'm now going to go back to the provider directory over here. They've given us another list now. So again, we had all these lists before, and now we're down to just 3 lists. So the second list for the service provider directory are those that we have not had contact with yet, that have not tried to get into the directory. And when I select our service providers, whoops, not that way. And the computer's not too laggy. You guys are able to follow this. You guys are seeing the spreadsheets popping up. Good. Just so you can know the same information we have. So only 68. So that was a very surprising number of the progress that we have made amongst our service providers. And I looked at other regional centers as well, and I saw very similar numbers. For example, Regional Center of the East Bay only had 59 that were left that had not been contacted on the list. So that is much better than I thought it was going to be. It's extremely encouraging because it means providers are going to be able to get paid more money faster, because they're going to be determined to have completed the quality incentive through the service provider directory. Now, these people that need surveys, after they complete the survey and they submit it, then they will be eligible starting the service month after submitting their information within the service provider directory. But again, I would just say, as like a vendor group community, to know that that list that I showed that has the 894 is, to our understanding, the people that were done and are in. And so again, we're very, very pleased to see where we're at as a service provider community. Thank you, guys. It has been extremely frustrating for you all to ensure that this information has made it successfully into the directory and has been transmitted to the regional centers. So we now have the list. I know we gave it over to Iqbal today as well, because we want to ensure that we've got all of your rates updated to the best of our ability now that we have this new QIP information. But we recognize, as we've told you previously, because of the alignment of when rates post, and then when authorizations are done, there will certainly be retroactive payments for service providers based off of the information that we have that's still rolling in from the department related to the participation in the service provider directory in the QIP. And then there's new provider list as well. So I know some of our vendors popped up on here too. So these are the service providers that are brand newly vendored as well. And I believe they've got the time frame of 45 days to get themselves into the directory. So we have that. The department is managing that as well. So let me see if there's any, I'm going to go back to the updates from DDS, but I don't want to move past the service provider directory update and where everyone can at least find the information that they might need. Any questions that folks have? All right. Very good. If there's no questions, I'm going to share my screen and continue just sharing DDS's email so that you have, again, the highlights on rate reform information. All right. Within this, there's a press thing that DDS put out, which I don't see very often, and I guess I missed it previously, but they did do a link in here that there's a summary of the initiatives that are related to Senate Bill 138. And so they have a nice little kind of Gantt chart that they put together here that outlines, I guess this is where we're at now. Where we're at with some of these initiatives, such as the standardized, well, for you all, the standardized vendorization procedures is probably one that would be of a lot of interest, especially if you work with multiple regional centers. I'm sure, Medi, it's fun when you go to do, a vendorization at like San Diego Regional Center, and it looks very different than when you get vendored at Alta California Regional Center. And so they're trying to standardize that type of stuff through this, and also at the same time developing a portal that they can use. So just wanted to share that the department has included that information, and I'm actually going to drop that into the chat for folks that might have an interest in following any of these ongoing initiatives that the department has. All right, and I'm curious how our network for the regional center is supposed to go down at 11:30 today. So curious what, if any, impact that may have on this meeting or accessing this information. Let's go back to that email from DDS. All right. Drop the chat out of here. Okay. Rate reform. Work continues with provider groups in areas such as transportation, early start, and specialized therapeutic services to address rate reform issues. If you were not on last week, the department surveyed the regional centers about what additional services that we need to talk with the state with to include in rate reform. And so we sent that list off with the feedback that you all provided as service providers as well. But specifically, there's groups right now that are focusing on transportation, early start, and specialized therapeutic services. Regional centers have through March 31st to finalize the correct service code alignments, the rate, the completion of the service acknowledgement forms, which must specify the rate. Once this service acknowledgement form is completed, regional centers will update authorizations as needed from the transitional rate to the updated aligned service codes, subcodes, and rate model. The service acknowledgement form is mandatory for all service providers using service codes within rate reform. This agreement informs the provider and regional center of any changes to service codes, subcodes, and rate changes. These forms should not contain blanks for this information when signed, since the form is a formal agreement. Some regional centers send them out to service providers blank, and then have the service providers just putting information in, and then things were left blank. We are making sure that all the boxes are filled on these, and hopefully correctly, even when we resend them back out again to you. Completed forms are required to finalize the transition to the new service codes. Yeah. Service providers that do not, this is new. I'll highlight this information here. Service providers that do not sign this form will be considered non-compliant and subject to potential termination under California Code of Regulations, Title 17, Section 54370. If you want to look that up, it's the code for de-vendorization for not following a vendorization regulation. And this is a new vendorization regulation, I guess, is the way they've done it via directive. So given this, and with that, they gives you 30 days, basically, if you follow that citation to get things done, or you get devendored. Given this, the regional centers are strongly encouraged to work with providers and the department to make sure that the forms are accurate and available timely for consideration and review before March 31st of 2025. The challenge that this, kind of gives to the regional centers is that we are still continuing to receive updating information from the department with your rates and workbooks. And some of those are still coming out in a corrected format right now. I do not foresee us having any issues with non-compliant service providers. I think if a service provider is not happy with the rate that they are being given, there is a process that we've made apparent. But I don't think it should delay us getting the information in. My staff are pushing to get every letter out as correct as possible by the 14th of March. And that includes information, you may want an exemption, but we want to make sure that you have the letter at least on hand so that you have something to, go along with that exemption that you're going to be submitting. I know that we have a list of a few exemptions for me to take a look at here shortly as well. And so I will be doing those. And the department has shared what the rate review form is which again, I'm gonna copy it, paste it into the, well, it's right here, actually. Rate adjustment effective, April, I think it's this one right here. So, this is the information if you do want to make that change. But again, this is already being given to you when you're discussing this with your community services specialist. My understanding is that we've already been in contact with all of the providers that could be interested in an exemption and are required to crosswalk their services. And I'm going to share that list in just a moment. But these things I understand are in process right now. And this is the guidance again from the department that they've just put out on how we should take a look at these. So providers may also submit a rate review form if they believe there's an error in rate calculation. Please note that if a provider eligible for the quality incentive rate component is pending due to completion and validation of information in the provider directory, the service acknowledgement form may need to be updated again in the future when eligibility for the quality incentive rate component is finalized. So again, that is the nightmare of Michelle Duchesne's existence right now, is having to get all of these rate reform letters that we already put out, hundreds of at this point, and now taking a look at which are the ones that now need corrected QIP information, because the department's making it clear they do want the acknowledgement forms to have that updated information. It's just a challenge because of the rolling information that we're receiving and will be receiving in the future. There will be less and less of them, and we'll get all the rates corrected back to January 1, and we'll get the retros applied for those that have already done their January and February billing by that point. All right. The employment access and employment capacity incentive measure continued through June 30th. Providers are encouraged to take advantage of opportunities to earn quality incentives in addition to rate models. Keep an eye on the department's events webpage for upcoming QIP workgroup meetings. Workgroup meetings are open to the public and held from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. I don't know. I thought I saw Carly on here, but I'm not sure if I did or not. I don't know if Carly's interested in talking about those two measures, but I understand that we've done well with those previously with our regional center. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to have those continue, and hopefully you as service providers continue your excellence in expanding employment opportunities for our clients. Some people question about whether or not regional centers should be assessed for the quality of work done by our providers when it comes to expanding these opportunities, because that's really what it is, right? It's really you all doing it. You know, we score really well. And so I guess for our regional center, I don't mind being tied to the work that is being done by our local providers for the quality incentives. If I was at a different regional center where maybe you were all not so interested in expanding all of those, employment opportunities, it would be a different scenario. But I'm very pleased to see that, they're going to keep counting these things and we can keep getting recognition locally that you guys are continuing to expand the opportunities for clients. Provider directory, the department has consolidated the lists. So I showed you guys that. Everyone got to see the lists down to just the two that we have there. So I'm going to go back over to DDS's webpage real quickly. And I want to see if folks have just questions as it relates to rate reform information.
I'm a new provider. Could you just show me what I have to do to meet this requirement?
Yeah. So when we have the new vendorization that occurs, within about a month after we do a new vendorization with a new provider, the information is going to bridge over from our regional center to the state of California about you being a new service provider in the state. At that point, the state of California is going to take over, and they are going to issue an invitation for you to participate in the service provider directory within, I believe it's 45 days after you have received that invitation. So when you're a brand new provider, you are going to be receiving, and I'm just going to share my screen with folks real quickly, just so. When you're a new provider now, the direction that we've received from the department is that you will receive the full, I'll just use this one as an example, the full benchmark rates. But again, you have that time frame to respond back to the invitation. And I believe that if you don't respond back to the invitation and don't get into the service provider directory, then you're subject to your rate being lowered to the 90% of the base rate.
So once I'm vendorized, I'll get an email and it'll have instructions on how to do what they need to do.
Yep. You'll receive the vendorization stuff, like we will handle that. Again, it can be 2 weeks after you're vendored, or it could be like 6 weeks after you're vendored. It's all about when the data transmits to the state. What they didn't want to do for you new people that are just getting vendored with the regional centers is put you on like a 45-day time clock that you're not in control of, because you don't know when the information gets over to the state. So the clock does not start until the state sends you an invitation as a new service provider. And again, that could be 2 weeks or 6 weeks after you're vendored by us.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome, Brian. Eric?
So I'll just wait.
Eric, go ahead. Oh, you're muted or something. Interesting. Nope. Nope. All right. Anything else from folks? So then let's talk about, for you all, what the update that we gave to client services this week. And we've got some client services managers on here as well, so this will be a little bit of a review for them. But what we shared is information that we've continued to share with you all, which is that we have a number of services that need to transition from one service code to another. And with that, there's some rate methodology changes that need to occur too. Let me get into the questions real quick, and then I'll get into these next steps. So I saw Tyler's hand popped up there from Pathway to Choices. Go ahead.
Hi, sorry. I know you were just talking about this and I got back to my computer a little late, but we have some questions about the rate reform service acknowledgement. I've actually been working and talking back and forth with Tom, and we've gotten some of our questions answered, but our big thing we haven't been able to get answered is about the change to an hourly rate. Looking at our rate reform service, it does say originally it's on 1/1/25. The unit type will switch to hourly instead of daily. There's a different part of the paperwork that does say none of the base rates and the final benchmark rate will change until July 1st, 2026. But we also had received something else saying, I believe it was going to be at the end of December this year for the change to hourly. So I was just looking for a little clarification.
Yeah, this could be for all of my staff and for everyone. So the directives as it relates to day programming have changed a little bit over the course of the rate study. And to my understanding, the idea for the methodology for rates shifting over from daily rates purely to hourly rates to align with how, in essence, all the other services in the rate study are done has been not universally accepted, and not something that even all the regional centers have been on board with switching over those daily rate programs to hourly rates. The way the directive is currently written is that there is no end to daily rates. There is no end to daily rates the way the directives are currently written. What it says right now is that, in essence, this will remain in place through December 31st. And I'll pull up the directive for you all so we can take a look at that, so everyone understands kind of how we are interpreting that specifically at our regional center right now, because it has changed. It's not really aligned with what we were looking at previously, which was, let's give folks time to get transitioned over to what do you call it? Let's get folks transitioned over to hourly rates. And that's in essence going to be our new rate methodology. I think that we've got something a little bit different in the directive. And so let me pull that up, and then I will allow folks to, if anyone has a comment about that, unmute themselves. about the daily rates or questions about that? All
So,
right, sharing my, oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, John, I do have a question because a lot of my programs currently have daily rates. And in the service agreements that we received, it also states on there, like that gentleman was saying, it states that we're gonna go to hourly rate. So, do we reach out to our community service specialist so that that can get revised? Or if we sign that, are we agreeing to go to a daily rate? I mean, to an
Again,
hourly rate.
again, I think that's kind of where we're at right now is that I know I spoke with I think it was last Friday, Michelle Duchesne and I were talking about this particular
Can't raise
issue, and I
my
wanted to make.
hand, John, but I have
Oh,
input when
there
you're
you
done.
there you go.
It wouldn't let me
Just
raise my hand.
chime right in, Michelle.
Yeah, so in working with developing the new acknowledgement forms with the QIP and all the updated information, DDS is still updating your workbooks as well with that QIP. We are issuing new acknowledgement forms to everybody, and in connecting with Iqbal, it's going to show the daily rate, as well as if you selected hourly rate, what that would be as well. So it's going to have both on there. We've made some changes based on the feedback from our providers.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I just want to highlight the way we're reading this, which is not what we have verbally said and everything else, just kind of very clearly that um this will continue until further notice and at least through December 31st of 2025. So providers that currently have a daily rate, new providers temporarily may bill services for each individual with a daily rate based on an authorized ratio of employee. So I don't see anything that says you must transition over to an hourly rate. And additionally, I've heard feedback from our local providers, and I've heard from it statewide of other regional centers that are not necessarily interested in all of these ratioed programs moving over to hourly. So, again, where we started and where we ended is a little bit different. Questions? Andrea, I saw your hand came up.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily related to that, but I had posted something in the chat about the job development rate. Will we be signing an acknowledgement for that? I received our job coaching rate for supported employment specifically, because that is a different rate.
John, I spoke with Iqbal about that this morning as well, Andrea. And yes, so the new acknowledgement should have both on there.
Okay, so if I already signed, because I got kind of a weird one, but if I signed them already, then new ones will be coming out for day program and supported and.
Correct. New ones will be coming out for all service codes primarily. They all were kind of weird based on the information. So
I really had like a weird subcode for SEP and so it was weird. So okay, thank you.
yeah, so I connected with him and both of those should be included.
Perfect.
Hey, Eric, do you want to see if your sound works again?
I log in with my cell phone, so it should work.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
I don't know what was going on there. I was saying earlier, I know how challenging this whole process has been and that you guys have been dealt a difficult hand. So I do appreciate all the work that you're doing. I wanted to just point out one thing. The original ideas when we first talked about this, there was ideas that we'd be meeting, right? That the provider, the regional center, we'd be meeting to discuss these things. And as data came later and later and things kept getting revised, it sounds like now the strategy is wait for those letters. And we're just trying to get those letters out and right. And I guess what I'm seeing is this March 31st deadline is pretty important. After that, you have to do, if you're not happy with whatever's in that letter, you have to sign it, right? Because you're going to be de-vendored. And then after that March 31st deadline, if you want to appeal whatever was decided, let's say because we're running out of time, we had to sign something that put us to a slightly different service code or an unbundled, bundled calculation wasn't right or hold harmless, right? Then we can appeal it after April 1st. Did I get that just generally right? Okay.
I mean, yeah, again, we've already had so many meetings with the impacted providers that this is related to, like for so many of the ones that are doing the transitions where there's still kind of a question about what's going to be on the forms. Um, but yes, the plan would be that we can get a letter to you all that very clearly indicates it. And but I would not say like if we don't have a compliance where someone has signed something saying I am going to do it this way while they're concurrently submitting an exemption form. I don't see like it doesn't seem like because then it would be more like an appeal or something like that. And I don't really see it that way. I think we're really just trying to gather the updated documentation. So I feel like if I have an exemption form or a acknowledgement form at the end of March, then that seems like that would be sufficient, right, Michelle Duchesne?
Correct.
Okay.
So my only feedback there was, so obviously some of us are very well connected, and so I can bother some of you guys if I need it. But I'm thinking of all the other providers out there that may be struggling and may have that. For me, the communication that I've been getting when I get sort of the formal communication, not sort of this communication or when I meet you guys separately, it's been kind of wait, we don't hear anything, and then we get a letter, and then we're trying to figure out what to do with that letter, and I need to figure out who I need to talk to. So I guess I would just encourage, it sounds like both for the provider and the regional center, the next 30 days is critical to make sure that all those things we just talked about, hourly versus daily billing is right, QIP status is right. What Andrew was just talking about, making sure these other rates, we had similar kind of questions, bundling, unbundling calculations. So to me, it sounds like for a lot of our rates, letters were likely going to be right going out this next month. But for anybody who has any questions, I'd really hope that we could find a way to maybe get maybe a meeting with those folks before the end of March, just to see if there's a quick, easy solution that we could agree to try to get those things resolution so we don't have to use that sort of rate dispute process that DDS has set up. So that's just sort of my thought, because we've talked a lot in these meetings, but sometimes I want to say, okay, let's look at my data real quick. And I'm sure there's other folks out there that are going to get nervous as we get through the March 31st date and might just say, can I have a 30-minute meeting to talk to somebody, make sure that's right? Just so that we can go past March 31st, all good, and not have these issues maybe continuing. So that's just some feedback that I'd recommend.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the only window that we could build into that is the last 2 weeks of March because we have to give the maximum amount of time to get the next run of letters correct. And I feel like that cannot be done with assurance before March 14th. And that really gives people then that 2 week period of time to schedule that meeting. Anyone that's left over with the specialists to ensure that they can get those questions answered. And I know it's super short, and I feel like it's going to get carried over into April. Honestly, like I feel like we're going to be into April having some of the same discussions. But the main thing is we don't want to interrupt any services for clients. We don't want any service providers. Like I feel very encouraged knowing that many service providers are involved in the quality incentive program already, because I feel like, that means that we've got folks in the service provider directory. Hopefully people are responsive to communications. So, but the challenge in getting all those letters out by March 14th as well is that DDS still has not released to us your individual workbooks. So though we can give you your rate workbooks, some of you that we have had these special conversations with have detailed informations within your service provider specific workbooks that we would love to have you guys have an opportunity to review. So that's the other thing about Michelle's level of concern here about meeting a March 14th deadline for the remainder of the accurate letters is that we're still waiting for the department to update all of your workbooks with that information, because Helen's team have to meet with these 048 service providers and share with them the workbooks, and they're going to want to take a look at how we broke down the different positions that you worked under their vendorization. Any other questions? Let's see, I'm just going to check the chat real quick. Have all the workbooks been sent out? I've been answering that. Okay. Yeah, the challenge is that again, the last downloaded version of the workbooks that we have is does not include the updated QIP information. And you guys just saw a letter, directive, whatever, guidance to the regional center saying you're going to need to update your letters with updated QIP stuff. So it's a frustration going on statewide. I will just say I've reviewed a number of correspondence between service providers and our regional center, and I've kind of been sharing it with our executive director, and I just really appreciate you all. I know that I see that people are not they're frustrated, but people are not attacking our regional center. People understand that we're trying to do our very best to get the accurate information out to you all as timely as possible. But again, there's a reason why, you know, we have multiple meetings about this a week with the Department of Developmental Services, because the operationalizing has been certainly a challenge. Meanwhile, I hope that you are all seeing your rates going up. I hope you're seeing, a number of you are seeing your rates going up. I hope you saw billing go up in January and February for those that got the last part of the rate study increases. All right. Just talking about, I already shared DDS's website, but just wanted to highlight a few things real quickly from DDS. That's our intranet there. First, as I'm talking, I'll say that our move to the new office is heading into next week. So the managers will be moving into the office on Wednesday, I believe. We're gonna have staff coming in for tours. Michael Mercado, we're gonna pick out your cubicle, I believe, during your tour as well, on Monday. So we are looking forward to moving into our new space. And then I believe our first meeting for service providers where you can come in will be our March Provider Advisory Committee meeting. And so do want to encourage those of you that are interested in visiting our new building to do that then. DDS's calendar I had mentioned previously, but the Quality Incentive Program Work Group, my understanding is, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're going to continue to be developing quality incentives that are related to different service codes. And so I think just for you as service providers, having your voice active in any of these activities is highly encouraged. The master plan meetings are finishing up. They're going to be holding a meeting on March 19th, I know. March is going to be so busy, my goodness. But they're going to be holding the master plan meeting. Some of the specific details and are starting to come together for that as well. I'm just clicking through this just to share what's on their website. You can find updates from their work groups that they've been having, as well as here's the agenda there where they'll post for the upcoming meeting. And then if you really get interested in what's going on for the future of developmental services in California, you can look at the presentation and I think even watch the video of what they're putting together for the master plan for developmental services. Not a ton else on DDS's website that I wanted to highlight, other than I will note that they, on the front page, continue to have their resources for all Californians. We did get a brief HCBS update from the Department of Developmental Services. As you can imagine, their communication with CMS right now is a little interesting. We're in the process of updating the state plan with the feds, and I think everything's kind of just on hold right now, to my understanding, as it relates to some of that stuff. So, but there's been a lot of questions about California's commitment to continuing to ensure that we've got services for all of those that are eligible within the state of California. And so this is an updated page that I hope the department is going to continue to keep updating about resources for all Californians. And I would be remiss, I do want to hop over to Alta's calendar real quickly and just share some of the upcoming things that we have as well. And to go to Alta's website, I know last time we shared with you, appreciate you guys checking out the things that get posted on here. I know certainly a lot of work goes into it to ensure that the things that, you know, are most vital to our community are easily accessible. I know we had a discussion from Jennifer Bloom last time about the NCI in-person survey. There's also information in here about the client and family satisfaction survey, but always the event calendar. Again, going over to our events calendar, seeing what we have upcoming as a and ensuring that you all know that you can send things to us too. And we're happy to get things on the calendar upcoming. Annual purchase of services is always a big one. Probably next week or the week after that, we'll have a discussion a little bit more about what to expect for that meeting. But you can see that those are coming up, and again, lots of good opportunities to participate in activities at the regional center. But want to plug maybe swinging by the new office for the provider advisory committee meeting. We'll try to get a full house. For HCBS, the other update that we got from the department was that the HCBS funding plans, what did they say, Alicia, or whatever? They're coming out any day. I think that's what we heard.
Yeah, they're not
from
saying,
Kylie.
yeah, they're not saying soon anymore. They're saying any day. And they said the funding will be the same as the last fiscal year, so $892,000.
Also, I just dropped in the chat the funding, what they're looking for is the same as last year. So I just put that in the chat. So if people want to start thinking about what they want to do for grants.
All right, so we are not shutting down this meeting until you guys copy out of the chat that little link that Kylie just put in there, because that is, as she said, the same thing we're going to be looking at this year when it comes to these proposals. And we'd like to, we don't actually have a lot of money that we're looking at doing for the DSP Collaborative this year. So lots of funding. How much was it last year, guys? Do you recall?
$892,020.
Say that one more time.
892,020.
Just want to make sure. All right, very good. So that is a very large number of HCBS funding. We have been, I feel like, very successful in administering these over the years, and I have no idea how much longer this is going to be available to service providers. So provider advisory committee meeting, if you all have some ideas of Lindsay's on here or Garrett. But for those that are at the PAC, if you want to talk about the usage of HCBS funds, give us some, ideas. But again, you can see the guidance is the same as last year from the department. All right. Thank you all. Let's see. Just gonna hop in the chat real quick. I have an existing RCFE home wanting to accept ARF clients. How do I get started and who do I speak to? I bet you someone can drop their name in the chat for you real quick that you can reach out to Bali Rai. And then Braden. I've heard a number of disaster stories about the way other regional centers have handled this chaotic transition. Thank you for all the work you've done. You're very welcome. We're trying to be as transparent with you all, let you know kind of the information that we have, but just appreciate the patience with our staff as we try to process this. We are waiting for the new directive still, I think, Dawn, from the department. One more new directive still to come out.
I thought so. Thanks, John.
Alrighty. Thanks, folks. You guys grabbed that information for the HCBS grants, hopefully out of the chat. If you have not done it previously, think about it. If you did it previously, think about doing it again. All right. Have a great weekend, folks. Thank you again for the presentations.
Thank you.